Hello, everyone, and welcome to Full-on, your Fulham-centric football podcast. Joining me this week are both the Jacks, AJ, Mozza. How you doing, guys?
All good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, very well. AJ, how you doing?
Super. And yourself?
Yeah, not too bad, not too bad. Obviously, we're here to do the quick review of the Forest game, although it is a day late. I do apologise my end on that. I'll blame Virgin Media, but hey, we'll crack on. At least we have a good positive result to talk about, although not necessarily the most entertaining game to try fill 20 minutes with, but we'll have this conversation as we do. Going into the game on Saturday, AJ, Fulham named another unchanged side from the week before in the league. Was that to be expected after Newcastle result? Were you happy with it? Was there any sort of changes that you would have made?
Yeah, the team pretty much picks itself at this point. I mean, any changes I make are just glossing over preferences as opposed to actual requirements within the squad. Iwobi hasn't done anything to want to be dropped. I just prefer the look of Nelson and how proactive he is on the ball. Andreas, as much as he isn't the brightest spark as far as we're concerned in that midfield, especially in a sort of 8 role, which isn't probably his preference. He'd prefer to be more of a 10. It's working, so I can't really knock it when we're getting the results, frankly.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough, isn't it? I'm not really surprised at that. What I was surprised though by was the fact that we know that Forest were without Morgan Gibbs-White on Saturday, which is obviously a great positive for us. I was surprised by the 3 changes that they made going into the game, a complete change of system for them from the games they played so far this season. Something that it looks like that we took advantage of, especially in the first sort of 10 minutes of the game. We were very much on top of the opening 10 minutes. 2 very quick corners at the beginning of the game, very much on the front foot, while they sort of looked like they were just trying to find their shape. There was a positive start to the game, obviously, by us. And that probably goes up until they have that sort of weird moment of offside goal by Wood that didn't even look like it went in from every replay that I've seen, but it must have done because VAR were checking to see if he was offside. Mozza, were you happy with the tempo from what you saw of the start of the game for us? Was it just a case of we were matching each other's teams, or with Fulham actually pushing to try and be the more aggressive attacking league?
A little from column A, a little from column B. I thought we were holding the game very well, but then again, we're giving away chances, like with that offside goal, which was clearly the right decision. When you look back at it, you can see was clearly offside. But again, throughout the game, trying to be the attacking side, I think that was essentially what we managed to do. But overall, yeah, I was quite happy with that performance and holding up the game and holding the ball. So, yeah.
Other than the the disallowed goal as it was, AJ, there didn't seem to be like there was loads of action in the first half. It sort of just seemed to be very much sort of middle of the park, both teams cancelling each other out. Is that the feeling you got when you were at the game as well, or was there something that I'm missing from the videos and the replays that I've seen?
No, to be honest, I think that's pretty odds on. Credit to Forest for holding out as long as they did before the second half inevitably happened. But it was very much us dominant on the game, and we didn't ever seem worried. We didn't seem very progressive, and we didn't seem very creative. But we never seemed like we were giving away many chances, other than, of course, as you said, the quote unquote disallowed goal. I don't think it ever was classified as a goal to be disallowed. I think it was actually flagged by the linesman and called as offside. So because they reviewed the offside and saw that it was in fact offside, it was never actually checked by Hawkeye to see whether or not it was over the line or not. So it was just an offside call. But either way, that's the closest they got to having pretty much any chances, the full 90, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, one thing I did notice from watching sort of the replays back and what I've watched the whole game back today is that I thought we were very solid defensively. I thought Anderson and Bassi are really starting to their partnership's really starting to come together now, and they look really really strong together. Mozza, how happy are you to finally have a sort of centre back pairing that we sort of can look at and go, they look like they work quite well together?
Yeah, very happy. I think they bounced off each other very well, even with that penalty shout that they had, where Anderson, sorry, I can't remember the names of the Forest players that went down, but Anderson took someone, well, didn't take someone down, clipped the ball away, and then Bassi did very much the same afterwards. I thought that it was the right decision when it went to VAR not to give that or either of those challenges as a penalty. I think Bassi was a bit lucky though. Like I think on another day with another ref, that might have been given for what Bassi for the challenge Bassi made. But the pairing of those two together, yeah, I think it's great. I think it's a match made in heaven, shall we say? And long may it continue. And I hope to see a lot more of it.
Yeah, obviously the first half sort of played out as it was, it was 0-0 at half time. Not really that shocking from watching it, as we all agreed it was pretty much, deadlock between the two teams. 2 minutes into the second half is when we sort of got the first bit of action with the penalty that Fulham got after a VAR check. Uh, AJ, what are your thoughts on the penalty shout? What are your thoughts on the whole incident as a whole?
Yeah, it's a penalty. It's one that you'd feel hard done by given against you because it is entirely accidental. It's not that the Forest defender had any intention of stepping on Andreas's heel. He's just accidentally put his studs down into Andreas's heel while he's tried to move towards the ball. And it's just black and white. It is what it is. It's a foul anywhere else on the pitch, just as it is inside the penalty box. And I think they made the right decision in that regards. Often we can see referees bottle those decisions because it's inside the penalty area. They say it's not deemable enough to be a foul where it would be anywhere else on the pitch. I'm quite pleased there was that clear line in the sand drawn that it was a foul, it was a penalty. It was just unlucky for the Forest defender, frankly, who I'm not going to sit here and scrutinise for an awful tackle or anything like that because it would be quite irritating to be on the reverse end of one of those decisions, although it being an accurate one.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think my sort of summary of it is it was accidental but clumsy. It's just one of those things that, as a defender, especially now that you have to really be careful. I had a discussion with somebody yesterday who was trying to say that Andreas was making the most of the contact, but I defy anyone to have their Achilles heel stepped on and not fall over. It hurts. So
Yeah.
it's one of those things, isn't it? Before we talk about obviously the penalty, scoring the penalty and moving on from there, we then had a bit of Fulham controversy. We love to have these moments at the club where there seemed to be a little bit of disagreement between Andreas and Rail who should take the penalty. My understanding from anything I've seen is that Rail is Fulham's penalty taker this season. Understandably, I understand why Pereira probably might want it, because in the fact he won the penalty and that he probably feels that he needs to score a goal to sort of get clicking this season. Mozza, what do you make of that whole sort of arguing about who should take the penalty, or do you not care as long as the penalty scored?
I'm glad you brought it up because obviously not being at the game in person, they didn't show the sort of commotion that happens on the cameras, or well, not at least from where I watched. So I saw that there was, I read rather that there was a bit of argy-bargy about taking the penalty. From my understanding, though, Ash, I actually thought Pereira was our given penalty taker. I'd rather it be Raul Jimenez. And I also read that once the goal was scored, Pereira was nowhere to be seen, didn't get involved in the celebrations. Fair enough, he might have been a bit upset that he didn't get to take it. Yeah, it's a tough one, really. I know he's our set piece taker as well. He's not always brilliant, even with corners, getting it over the first man. So I think I'd rather, like I say, have Jimenez take the penalty. And he scored. As much as I hate stuttering run up to the ball, I'm a bit old school. I just like it, go straight for it, run up to the ball and kick it hard as you can at the keeper and hope for the best. But a goal's a goal at the end of the day. So, yeah, I don't know what you guys make of that, or if I've got that completely wrong about who I thought it was.
I've got a couple bits on it. Firstly, just to give Andreas his due flowers. It wasn't that he didn't want to celebrate with the team. It was actually because he was injured in the build up to the penalty. He was asked by the referee to leave the pitch. So he was actually by the corner flag whilst the penalty was being taken. So he wasn't allowed to re-enter the pitch until the linesman / fourth official had given him permission to re-enter the pitch, and it wasn't worth him getting a yellow or potentially red card. It wouldn't be a straight red, but if he had already been on a yellow, it could have been a second yellow, etc. For re-entering the pitch without permission to go and celebrate with the rest of the players. So I think that's a little unfair. Whoever has written up that he's like actively like not celebrated with his teammates, I don't think that's necessarily the case. It's just that he was told to get off the pitch, and it was quite funny because he was basically stood in front of the away crowd whilst the penalty was being taken, watching it with the rest of us, which was quite entertaining. But in regards to the actual penalty itself, I must have missed a change in the rules when these stutters were allowed to happen again, because I thought you couldn't stop cleanly while taking a penalty. And has that rule gone out the window? Because I know it happened with...
The new rule is that a part of your body has to be moving. So as long as your non-standing leg is at least like moving slightly, doesn't matter how slowly, you're okay, as long as you don't physically stop him. Because Rail, he's quite smart in the sense that the non-standing leg is still moving while his standing leg is not. He's deemed to still be in motion, which means it's absolutely allowed. I, as a goalkeeper growing up, used to hate people taking penalties at me like that because it used to feel like an unfair advantage, especially now with the rules that goalkeepers have to stay on their line and they're not allowed to come off their line at all. It does feel like they're sort of leaning heavily into the advantage of the penalty taker rather than the goalkeeper. But I'm not going to complain. Rail scores, so we'll go with that. Quickly before we move on and we talk about the rest of the game, I want to add, obviously, talking about that Rail goal. That's Rail's 50th Premier League goal. It's quite an achievement for a player who missed quite a lot of playing time through a horrific injury. And I think that we're starting to see the old Rail come back a bit. I know that he frustrates a lot of Fulham fans because he build-up play isn't necessarily the greatest, but he does the one thing that we all ask the striker to do at the moment, which is put the ball in the back of the net. And he may be starved of some chances, and I think he's starting to take the ones that he's getting. It's some achievement scoring 50 goals in the Premier League for a player for any player. So I think that he deserves a lot of credit for that. And I'm glad that he seems to be hitting a lot of form again, which is great. And more hopefully that continues more as we go forward. We then look at the sort of going on in the game. We scored the goal after 4 or 5 minutes of the delay because of the penalty and all that sort of stuff. How do you see the next sort of 10 minutes going, AJ? Were we really under the cosh after scoring, or was it more just a case of we were quite happy to let Forest have the ball because we were standing quite strong defensively, and it was just a case of we were just letting the game hit that rhythm. I'm not quite sure how to describe that next sort of 10-15 minutes because it felt like Forest had a lot of the ball, but they weren't doing much with it.
I think it was just a matter of Forest wanted to react, and they did so. They just didn't do so with any conviction. So we looked very comfortable, which is something that I can say has been the case pretty much since Anderson has come into the squad. He's completely shored up that defence. It's like fitting the final piece into the jigsaw. Just his communication alone, without his actual physical presence, completely seems to dominate that defensive third, and make it so that we seem really, really difficult to break down, which is a nice change of pace, and actually meant that for one of the first times sitting on a 1-0 lead, I didn't feel panicked going into the end of a game as a Fulham fan, which is a ridiculous change of pace. I felt quite composed for the full 90, not thinking that Forest would actually be too much of a worry, aside from maybe a moment of magic, which any team could pull out. But I don't know what I'm not used to this feeling.
Yeah, I think it goes back to, I think that we, for the first time in a very long time, have 4 defenders that all of us are very comfortable to see defending. I think Robertson's more than got his place down the left. Kenny Tete is, he's just stepped up another gear again this season. I don't know where the man finds more gears from, but I was very happy with Timothy Castagna coming in last year and playing really, really well. And he did keep Tete out, but Tete's just taking it up again this year. He's just we need to get him down on a new contract ASAP because you know I I love having him play for the club. And I don't want him to walk away sort of at the end of the season because of that. And Anderson and Bassi are just great. Not much really else happened for the rest of the game other than one incident where Mozza's already sort of spoke about it, where we potentially could have given away a penalty where Bassi controlled the ball, but also looked like he might have got a little bit of connection with the Forest striker before the ball then sort of went and landed out on the wing, and Callum Hudson-Odoi had a shot that just went just over. Looking at our penalty and looking at that penalty shout, AJ, what are your thoughts on that penalty shout for Forest? Would you be annoyed if it isn't given because ours is, or do you agree with the decisions that were made on the day?
No, the decisions were spot on. It was a brilliant piece of old school defending, and one of those ones that, once again, anywhere else on the pitch would not be given as a foul. And just because it's inside the penalty area, it shouldn't have been looked at and been given as a foul just because of it being quite a rotund tackle, let's say. It was clearly winning the ball. It was contact. It's a contact sport at the end of the day, and that isn't a foul anywhere else on the pitch. And the referee has done a brilliant job with both instances to go, right, it doesn't matter where this has happened. Look at the incident within itself. Is this a foul? Yes for the first one, no for the second one. It's as straightforward as that. And I think the referee and the linesman and the VAR have all done an excellent job of not biasing their opinions based on the tackles being in or outside of the penalty area.
I think that's a great explanation of it, to be absolutely fair. I was a bit torn on it. I've seen the replay of the Bassi tackle about 6 or 7 times. There's 1 or 2 angles where it looks way worse than another angle, and it is one of those that if it was given, it would have been extremely soft. But we're Fulham, and we've given away penalties for way less than that in the past. So you wouldn't be surprised if it was given. But I'm happy it wasn't. The rest of the game sort of played out. Sort of, it was a bit dull. Not much really happened. There was that one other Jimenez chance where I think Forest thought he was offside, and he had tons of space, clearly onside, and he sort of shot and missed narrowly to the left hand side of the goal. Other than that, not much really happened for the rest of the game. I think we just sort of professionally closed out the game and come away from Forest with the 3 points, which is great, guys. We'll finish the show how we always finish these shows. We'll get our man in the match sort of awarded, and then we'll give one together. Mozza, who is your Fulham man of the match for this game?
Well, I think you'll be delighted to hear, Ash. I'm going to give it to your best mate, Calvin Bassey. Few like touch and go moments there where things might not have gone in his favour, but from what I saw, just solid partnership with Anderson as we discussed earlier, and completely managed to just be that man in the back four that we need to stop anything going awry. But yeah, I'm going to give it to him for today's, not today's performance, but for Saturday's performance.
AJ, what about yourself?
I'm going to go straight away and give my honourable mention to Lukic, because once again he had a stellar performance and he makes it look effortless, and it takes an incredible player playing somewhat naturally out of position, because we know that based on last season we actually preferred him higher up the pitch, and now he seems to be dominating this number 6 role in a more composed way than Paulinho was doing for us. Not saying he, by any stretch of the imagination, he's a better player than Paulinho, or that he's a better defensive-minded player than Paulinho, but he's making it look like less effort. So Lukic is my honourable mention, but it's a toss-up between Kenny Tete and Anderson for me. I'm inclined to give it to Tete just because he was so strong both up and down the pitch.
I think that one thing that Lukic definitely has is talking about it that he's picked up from that Paulinho did do. He can half get a yellow card. He's one yellow card away from a suspension, and we're in game day 6. It's madness, but hey, he does that job in the midfield, and he deserves that shout out. And he would have been sort of my honourable mention as well, Lukic. But for me, I'm really torn between Bassey and Anderson for man of the match for Saturday. I thought they both really, really, really controlled the tempo of the game, and they were really assured at the back. And I don't want to go biased with Bassey just because everyone knows how much I love him, but I think that for me, the last couple of weeks, Anderson has been getting a lot of pat on the backs, coming in and really steadying up our defence and looking good as an attacking threat as well. So it's almost because of that I want to give it to Bassey, because I sort of feel like he's been overshadowed a little bit by his defensive partner over the last couple of weeks, and it's good to see that he's raising his game to match that and not sort of shying away and letting Anderson just take control. We've not had. I don't think it's far fetched to say I don't think we've had a centre back pairing like these two since Hughes and Angerland, in the sense of they seem to make each other better rather than one takes control and the other one just mops up. I think they're both using their strengths together, because we know they're both strong at different things, and it seems to be that we've got a strong centre back pair in there. It's a really hard test this weekend. When we go to Man City, it's a free hit for everyone, and we'll talk about that on Friday's pod when we preview that game. Try not to cry and all just guess it's going to be a 6-7-0 loss, but we'll sort of study that and talk about that when we record before we come out on Friday. Other than that, guys, thank you very much for joining me. Obviously, we're going to give our man of the match because 2 of us voted it to Calvin Bassey. Please, everyone, like and subscribe to the show. Share it with your Fulham mates. We'll see you on Friday as we preview that daunting trip up to Man City. Thanks for joining me, Jack. Thanks for joining me, other Jack. And have a good week.
Ciao.